Hello and welcome to Unacademy IAS, a one stop destination for all the English medium civil services aspirants. Welcome to another session of Economy this week, wherein we are going to cover the important economy related articles from different newspapers from 26th February to 4th of March 2026. The discussion will be comprehensive, helping you answer the questions in prelims as well as mains examination. So, if you're liking this initiative, do not forget to hit the like button. And if you're yet to join our YouTube channel, kindly do it right now. Before I start with the first important article, here is a important announcement. I know a lot of you are considering starting your preparation for the prelims examination 2027, but you have lot of doubts, you have lot of questions, you're worried about the approach that you're supposed to take and ace the examination in the first attempt. If you need a guided approach for acing the civil services examination, please enroll into the Unacademy Platinum batch for the year 2027. If you wish to enroll and want to get to know the details of this particular program, there is a mobile number that is given in the description of the video. Check out the mobile number, give us a call. We will give you all the details of the Platinum program. Now, let me start the first important article. The center's focus now has shifted from selling the public sector undertakings to earning more from them. What are the important points? Let's start. The Government of India, after the industrial policy announcement of 1991, which is very famously known as the new industrial policy or new economic policy, or very famous for the reforms, liberalization, privatization, and globalization. In short, LPG reforms. So, after the announcement of the LPG reforms, had set up a committee. In fact, one of the areas that was covered under the industrial policy was the idea of disinvestment. And after this announcement of the policy, the government of India set up Rangarajan Committee. And the Rangarajan Committee also recommended going for disinvestment of many of the central public sector enterprise. And the basic idea was if you sell up to 49% of the ownership or basically the equity in these particular CPSAs, you can continue to have majority of the ownership after this. You can take decisions, have management control over this, but at the same point of time, by selling the ownership, essentially disinvesting, by selling equity or the ownership in these particular companies, you'll be able to generate revenues. You'll be able to generate revenues. So Government of India since then has been using the route of disinvestment. In every year's budget, there would be a target that would be provided or that would be taken up by the government. Certain sales of a certain amount of ownership, up to certain amount of ownership of equity will be done in these central public sector enterprises, and that revenue collected would be part of the capital receipt of the government. It will also help government raise revenues or the receipts and reduce its reliance on borrowings in the market. So historically, this has been used as a route or as a method by the government of India to generate revenue. But in recent times, there have been certain concerns raised regarding this particular method. There have been certain issues wherein the government of India now has realized the government can keep on proposing the target of disinvestment in the budget. It will keep on proposing. But the performance of the disinvestment has not been up to the mark. In simple terms, the government will keep a target of, let's say, 4 lakh crore rupees, 2.5 lakh crore rupees, 3 lakh crore rupees by selling the equity of the CPSEs in the market and generating revenue. But in most of the cases, the amount of receipts which have been collected by the government of India through this particular route has been much lower. In fact, if you take out the receipts which have been collected for the year 2022 and 2023, in most of the years, the receipt collection under this route has been experiencing a declining trend. So Government of India now has looked at all of this issue and has implemented certain very important changes. What are these particular changes? Point number one. The government has implemented national monetization policy or National Monetization Pipeline. The first iteration or NMP 1.0 was implemented till 2025 for 4 years. And after this, very recently, the government of India has announced NMP 2.0. In the last week's video, I've covered NMP 2.0. If you're yet to watch it, please do watch it. So NMP 2.0 for the next 5 years, that is till 30, has been announced by the government, through which lakhs of crores of worth of assets will be leased out. Focus is on leasing out. Of course, there is also an element of sales there, or apart from that, there's an element of sales. But most of the revenue or most of the money that will be collected under the NMP will be done by leasing out the assets. So government of India now is able to generate revenue without selling the ownership, because under disinvestment, what the government used to do, government will sell ownership in the company. For example, LIC, Life Insurance Corporation. The government of India until very recently had 100% ownership in LIC. But the government of India has disinvested some of the ownership. Approximately, again I'm saying approximately, 5% of the equity in the LIC has been sold by government of India, and now it owns around for 95% of the equity in the LIC. But by selling the shares, the government has been able to get certain amount of money from the market. So traditionally, government used to sell and get the money, use the money for purposes, right? Or certain expenditure purposes. But now government of India, rather than conducting disinvestment, has been using the national monetization policy to generate revenues. This is the first very important change that the government of India has done. And the second very important change is, until very recently, whenever the budget used to be announced, there used to be a separate target that would be announced by the government under disinvestment. And the disinvestment was mentioned under a separate head. That is, a separate category of capital receipt was listed as the disinvestment proceed. But the government of India now has done away with this particular separate listing under the budgeting. Rather than this, it is basically listed as a part of other capital receipts. Other capital receipts. So these are certain very important changes that the government of India has done in the context of disinvestment. But more importantly, what is the summation of all of this? You will see that the government of India is changing its policy. Rather than sale of the asset, now the policy is to lease the assets, to allow the private sector to utilize the asset, and that can essentially ensure there is a revenue stream for the government of India without selling away, without losing the ownership of these particular assets. Right? So this is the change in the policy that has been discussed under this particular article. Now, based on this, let's solve an MCQ. Consider the following statements regarding the disinvestment. DIPAM stands for Department of Public Asset, Department of Investment and Public Asset Management. DIPAM functions under Ministry of Finance. So DIPAM functioning under the Ministry of Finance takes care of all things associated with disinvestment in the central public sector enterprise. Yes, the statement is true. The government in its policy of 2021 has for the first time classified the CPSEs into strategic and non-strategic. Now listen to me very carefully. The government, no doubt, in 2021 has announced a new policy for public sector enterprises. Under this policy, the government has divided the public sector enterprises into the strategic as well as non-strategic. Strategic as well as non-strategic. Right? No doubt, this is the policy which has been announced. And according to this particular policy, the government simply says it will have minimum presence within the strategic. Minimum. As minimum as possible. For example, in many of these areas, the government simply says, I will not have entities more than 4 in number. If there are more than 4 in number, we will merge them, reduce the number of entities. So in strategic, not more than 4 or minimum present. In non-strategic, no presence whatsoever. But is it the first time that a public sector policy was announced by the government where the division has been done into strategic and non strategic? Statement is incorrect. Why? Listen to me carefully. Back in the year 1999, the government of India had announced a policy for public sector enterprises. And when this policy was announced, the government of India had divided the public sector enterprises into strategic as well as non strategic. And in the strategic, essentially the government of India had listed railways, atomic energy, right, and arms and ammunitions. So these were the areas that were classified back in 1999 as the strategic as well as right others were classified as non-strategic. But anyways, second statement is incorrect. The third statement, the proceeds from the disinvestment are counted as a part of revenue receipt, no capital receipts. The proceeds of disinvestment are counted as a part of capital receipts. So first statement is correct. Right option for the question is option A. Let's go forward. Second article. USA has slapped 126% levy on India's solar imports. Now, what are the important points? Listen to me very carefully. The government of USA has conducted an investigation. And based on the findings in the investigation, the government of USA has announced the solar imports, that is essentially exports for us. So India's solar exports which are entering into USA market now, in addition to the normal tariffs, will be attracting a countervailing duty of 126%. Countervailing duties of 126%. And this has raised a concern. It is expected to have a larger impact on India's solar exports which are entering into USA. What are the important points? Let me explain. In case of India, the government of India has been promoting through multiple policies manufacturing of solar units or solar modules. The production has gathered pace. The capacity of production of solar modules is high in India. According to one estimate, we are able to produce more than 140 gigawatts of solar units in India. And it is expected to reach 165 gigawatts in a couple of years. But the problem is the production capacity has increased, the demand has not increased at the same pace, which means there is a gap between supply and demand. So essentially what happens is some of the production that is done in India, we are able to export it to the global market. Simple. We are able to export it to the global market. And most of the exports in this case, which are done by India, essentially reach the market of United States of America. This is point number one. Point number two, the government of USA now has conducted an investigation, like I said earlier. What is the argument of government of USA? The government of USA simply says the manufacturers in India are receiving subsidy benefit. They are receiving subsidy benefit. For example, multiple initiatives have been implemented in India. One example I'll give you, export promotion of capital goods. Right? So multiple initiatives have been implemented where subsidies are provided by the government. And whenever the countries do investigate the imports like this, and if they realize that, the importing country realizes that the imports are competitive in their market because imports are getting certain subsidy benefit. In such cases, the importing governments can impose a duty which is called as anti-subsidy duty. Anti-subsidy duty. Or else this is also referred to as countervailing duty. Let me explain this with a very simple example. Imagine, right, just to make it simple, I'm taking this example. Imagine I'm manufacturing this in India and I'm exporting. The actual cost of production, including profits by the way, right, just imagine for sake of understanding. For actual cost of production, when I export it to USA, will be let's say 50 rupees. But the government of India will give me a subsidy of 10 rupees. Now, because the government of India is giving me a subsidy of 10 rupees, I will not export it at 50. Rather, I will reduce the cost to 40 rupees. So in terms of dollars, now the price of the product will be lower. And when the price of the product becomes lower, it can become very competitive in the USA market. And the demand for this particular product in the USA market will increase. Rather than purchasing the domestically manufactured goods, now USA consumers will purchase more and more imported goods. It will hurt the domestic manufacturing. So everybody is able to understand how subsidies provided by government of India can hurt, right? Let's say the activities of the domestically produced goods in the USA market. So the same argument has been put forward by the government of USA, citing multiple schemes of government of India. And in such cases, to nullify the subsidy benefit that I am getting as an exporter, the government of USA, which is an importing country, will impose additional duties which is called as anti-subsidy duty and countervailing duty, right? Or countervailing duties. So 126% of countervailing duties, CVDs, in addition to the existing duties, have been announced by government of USA. As a result of this, India's exports to the USA market are going to be hurt because of this. Right? So these are certain very important points associated with the second article here. And it's not that only India's exports have been targeted by USA. Please remember this. The USA government has conducted investigation in multiple countries' imports. One of the country was India. What about the other countries? Indonesia. Its exports also have been targeted now and CVD has been announced. The exports from Laos also have been targeted and the CVDs have been announced. So it is not just India, but other countries' exports also have been covered under the CVD. Now, based on this, let's solve an MCQ. Consider the following statements regarding countervailing duties. These are imposed to negate activity of dumping. No, it is not in the context of dumping. CVD is imposed to nullify the subsidy benefit. What is essentially the difference? When an exporter, I repeat, when an exporter purposely suppresses the price, purposely reduces the price and sells more into a particular country, that is called as a dumping activity. Here, India's exporter is not purposely suppressing the price. It is not just reducing the price so that they will sell in USA. They are reducing the price because they are getting the subsidy from the government. That is, right, let's say the subsidy provision, reducing the prices, not dumping activity. So first statement is incorrect. And in case of dumping activity, the government, importing government, will be allowed to impose a duty that is called as anti-dumping duty. Okay. Second one, these are also known as anti-subsidy duties. Yes, second statement is correct. Third one, these duties are completely prohibited under WTO framework. No. Under WTO, there are certain, right, let's say, agreements. For example, there is agreement on subsidies and countervailing measures. There are provisions under GATT where in order to nullify the subsidies, the importing country is allowed to impose the countervailing duties. So second statement is correct. Right option for the question is only option A. That is only one of the three statements are correct. Third article, why EV adoption is stuck in slow lane in India. And before I start the discussion related to this article, listen to me very carefully. A lot of you, while I'm discussing, will be more interested in writing down whatever I'm saying, in noting down the points. Please don't do that. Listen to the discussion. Once the session is uploaded on the YouTube, you'll be able to download the notes as well as the PPT of this particular session, the link for which is provided in the description of the video. Now let's start the discussion. Why EV adoption is very slow in India. Why do I say it is very slow? The government of India has a target of having 30% EV penetration by 2030. 30% EV penetration by 2030. And to a very great extent in the sense, EV penetration, that is basically consumers purchasing the EV, electric vehicles, has increased. For example, back in the year 2020, when you look at the data, that is Vahan database, etc., back in the year 2020, the EV penetration was just 1%, just 1%. And by 2025, the EV penetration has reached 8%. So there is a huge increase in the adoption of the EV vehicles by the consumers in India. But having said so, are we going to meet the 30% target by 2030? Most of the experts are of the opinion that no, we are not going to meet the target. In fact, looking at the situation right now, it will be very difficult to meet even halfway. That is, even 15% looks very, very ambitious right now. But the question arises, what has been done by the government in order to increase the penetration? And why these particular measures are not yielding expected results? Why is the penetration not increasing according to the expectations of the government of India? Let me explain both of them. The biggest issue in the context of promotion of EV adoption in India has been that the reforms which have been implemented by the government, majority of these particular reforms are focused on the demand side in the market. And very few reforms, especially the recent one, I'll talk about that as well, is focused on the supply side. And because we have implemented reforms mainly on the demand side, yes, it has helped make EVs cheaper. It has helped consumers purchase more and more electric vehicles. What do you mean by that? To begin with, one of the biggest concerns associated with the electric vehicles in India was when you compare the electric vehicles to ICE vehicles, internal combustion engine. ICE stands for internal combustion engine. When you compare EV vehicle cost with the ICE, right, vehicles cost, the EV vehicle cost was very, very high, very high. And when the cost of the vehicles is so high, and India being very sensitive towards the pricing of a product, the concern was people will not be purchasing EVs. So what did the government of India do? Government implemented initiatives in the form of FAME 1, faster adoption and manufacturing of electric vehicles 1, and FAME 2. Essentially, under FAME 1 and FAME 2, the government of India provided the subsidies for the manufacturers so that the cost of the electric vehicles will go down. With the lower cost of the electric vehicles, the adoption of the electric vehicles, that is simply the purchases of electric vehicles, would increase. And that has worked out. And that is essentially the reason why I'm saying the reforms which have been implemented mainly are on the side of the demand, which are basically promoting the demand for electric vehicles. So this has been helpful in improving the purchases adoption of EVs in India. But at the same point of time, there are bigger concerns which are on the supply side. And if these particular concerns are not addressed, doesn't matter how much ever policy push the government will provide, we will not be able to attain the target. What do I mean by that? Let's say I want to purchase an electric vehicle or I've purchased an electric vehicle. There is always a concern in my mind regarding range. This particular term essentially is called as range anxiety. A lot of people in India do not prefer EVs. If you ask them why, their simple answer is if it is a petrol vehicle, let's say a two-wheeler petrol vehicle, I can refill it and the petrol stations are there on every major national highway. And the presence of these petrol, right, let's say petrol bunks, it's not very, right, let's say distant also. Within couple of kilometers, you will keep on finding multiple petrol bunks. So there is never a problem in terms of refueling. But when you talk about electric vehicles, they have certain amount of a range. You will have to recharge them. And that is where the infrastructure problem associated with the EVs will come into picture. And that is one of the most important reasons why it is said the adoption of electric vehicles is lagging behind in India. Let me give you a very simple example. You take the metro cities or basically the cities which have very large population of more than 10 lakh, more than 1 lakh, etc. There are more than 40 such cities in India. And if you look at these particular 40 plus cities, Out of these, only 8 cities have a penetration of more than 10% of electric vehicles. They have a penetration of more than 10% of electric vehicles. Reason being, even in these particular major populated cities, charging infrastructure is not present. These are present but in very limited spaces. There are a lot of restrictions in terms of getting access to charging infrastructure, etc. Right? The government of India is implementing reform, by the way. It is implementing reform right now, under which the battery swapping infrastructure is promoted, charging infrastructure is promoted. But the problem right now is that these kind of reforms are focused on public transportation. Another issue, it is more focused on public transportation rather than promoting private transportation. For example, EV buses are being promoted. And when the focus is on the public transportation, yes, adoption of EV vehicles in the public transportation will be more, it will be higher. But at the same point of time, the commercial vehicles, for example, the two wheelers, the four wheelers, that is where the penetration has been very, very low in India. For example, in the context of two wheelers, penetration level is 6%. And it is much more abysmal in case of four wheelers because the penetration level is just 3%. Whereas in the three wheelers, such as autos, right, the adoption of electric vehicles is much, much higher. So these are some of the right issues which is holding back the adoption of electric vehicles in India. So the government of India, along with the reforms on the demand side, has to implement the reforms on the supply side as well, so that we will move towards more and more the target that we have set up, that is of 30% by 2030. Next article, RODTEP and textile exports. Now what is the issue? Textile exporters seek restoration of RODTEP. Now what is the important debate here? The government of India back in the year 2021 introduced remission of duties and taxes on export products. RODTEP in short. Under this, whatever are the embedded taxes, that is the taxes at the local level, the state level, and at central level, which the manufacturer has paid, but they have not received refunds in any manner. Simple, they have paid the taxes either at the center, state, or at the local level, but these particular taxes, refunds have not been received by them. So essentially, they will add these particular taxes in deciding the market prices of the product, which will reduce the competitiveness in the export market. So government of India introduced RODTEP and covered multiple products under this, including textile exports, and announced remission. Remission in simple terms here means whatever are these kind of taxes which are called as embedded taxes, where you have not received the refunds, these particular embedded taxes, it will be remitted back to you. Of course, not in the form of a cash, but freely transferable duty credit scripts, right? Digital version of duty credit scripts. So this was implemented. The government of India now has announced that many of these particular products which are getting the remission under RODTEP, the benefits will be cut by half. The benefits that these entities are receiving will be cut by 50%. And in the textile sector, the textile exporters were getting the benefits in the range of 2.5% to 4.7%, which will be cut by half now. With reduction in the benefits, what is expected? With the reduction in the benefits, obviously now the market price, or essentially the cost of production for the manufacturers, textile exporters, will increase. And when the manufacturing cost increases, the competitiveness of these textile exports will be affected. And these exporters are basically saying, if you withdraw these kind of benefits, 58% of cotton textile exports will be hit by the withdrawal of RODTEP benefits or reduction by half. And much more important point to note here is the government of India in recent times has signed multiple trade agreements. For example, We have signed a trade agreement with the European Union, United Kingdom, etc. We are negotiating one more with USA. With signing of these particular trade agreements, we will be able to export more and more textile products from India. And as such, textile exporters are competing very closely with other countries, for example, with Bangladesh, with Vietnam, with China, etc. Now, in that particular context, if you withdraw the tax benefit, if you withdraw the RODTEP benefits, these exporters will be hit very hard. So, these are certain very important points in the context of RODTP and textile exports. Next one, modified Udan scheme expected to extend VGF support. What is the right discussion here? The government of India announced National Civil Aviation Policy back in the year 2016. Under this civil aviation policy, the government brought out a new initiative known by Regional Connectivity Scheme. It is also known as Udan, Ude Desh Ka Aam Nagrik. Under this, the objective is basically connect the tier 2 and tier 3 cities with the civil aviation market. Because there is a potential, let's say potential, the government would provide certain support in order to develop the civil aviation market in the tier 2 and tier 3 cities. The first round of Udan has been implemented. Multiple airports, right, have been covered under this. Government of India now is considering revamping the Udan initiative. Under this particular revamped Udan initiative, the government is simply saying it is expected to extend the viability gap funding. There is a financial assistance that is provided under this initiative called as VGF. And it is not just in the civil aviation market. VGF is also part of multiple other initiatives of the government of India. So under this Udan, the government used to provide VGF for a period of 3 years. Rather than limiting it to 3 years, now the government of India wants to extend it to 5 years. But the proposal, it is not the announcement by the way, proposal. The proposal is the extension once it is done, the VGF will be progressively reduced. Third year, it will be, 75. Fourth year, it will be 50%. And in the fifth year, it will be reduced to 25%. So, the VGF is proposed to be extended but tapered off. In addition to this, we want to cover 120 additional destinations. We want to provide or cover more than 4 crore passengers over the next decade under the revamped Udan initiative. Done? Right, so this is one more very important proposal. Let's wait and see what will be the final announcement done by the government in the coming days. The next article, Sri Lanka blue bonds. The first blue bonds of Sri Lanka now have been listed. They have been listed, duly listed in the NSE International Exchange at Gift City. What is the importance? There is a concept of a blue bond. Blue bond are a subset of green bonds. What is the idea? Green bond essentially will focus on the projects which are environment friendly. And within this, the blue bonds generally focus on any project that is associated with conservation in the context of the, let's say, water, that is seas, etc. So Sri Lanka's first blue bond, Sri Lanka's first ever issue of blue bond was done by DFCC Bank back in the year 2015. Now this particular blue bond, which is already listed, in Colombo, it is already listed in the Colombo Stock Exchange. Now there is a memorandum of understanding between Colombo Stock Exchange as well as the Gift City NSE. The Gift City NSE. And this particular blue bond now will be dually listed. Dually listed in the sense it will be listed in the Colombo Stock Exchange. It will also be listed in the Gift City NSE International Exchange. And that will essentially help, basically raise funds by listing these particular kinds of bonds in the second market. So this is a very important update in the context of the Gift City National Stock Exchange, International Exchange, along with the concept of a blue bond. So these are the very important articles, the concepts as well as the questions associated with the articles from the economy in different newspapers between 26th March to 4th 26th February to 4th March 2026. If you have liked the discussion, do not forget to hit the like button. If you're yet to join our YouTube channel, do it right now. See you again next week with one more set of articles. Till then, take care. Have a great day.